boys and girls. Didn't you enjoy this weekend? The weather was so beautiful. You know what I did? I went right out into my garden and I was doing a lot of weeding because they like to grow no matter what. And you might have some flowers or vegetables growing in your house, or maybe when you take a walk or ride your bike with mom and dad, you might see some gardens along the way. Well, as I was pulling those weeds, I was coming across all kinds of things. I found a little worm in my garden. Oh, there were a lot of ants creeping and crawling all around. And there were ladybugs, grasshoppers, and even a bumblebee was kind of buzzing around my head. I don't know if it was a bumblebee or a wasp, but I could hear the buzzing. And so I was wondering if any of you have ever gone out and looked for bugs around your house. Well, that little ladybug, when I was digging, suddenly it's very tiny and very gentle, landed right on my arm. And as I saw it there, I thought, I wonder what the ladybug's job is in my garden. What is he doing? Because I know what bees do, and I know what butterflies do, and worms do, but I wasn't sure about the ladybug. So today I brought a book with me that's going to teach us about that. When you're working in the garden, I know you use a lot of different gardening tools like I do. And then I was watering my flowers with my watering can, taking care of everything so it would look nice. I've got plenty of time this summer to do that too. So today my story is called What About Ladybugs? This is going to tell us a story about a gardener, and he was wondering that too, but he learned how very important ladybugs are when before this story he didn't even know. So let's check it out. Let's share it and see what's going to happen. What about ladybugs? Well, the gardener looked all around his garden and he liked what he saw. There were hardy vegetables. See them growing over here? And there were fruit trees. Oh, you might have some of those by your house too. And then there were many, many kinds of flowers. From the trees, he would get a sweet smell from the fruit growing. And then when he looked in the garden, he would see ladybugs and wasps, bees and butterflies, aphids and ants. He's got a beautiful garden. Well, the gardener thought about all of those insects, and he knew that bees and butterflies helped to help his garden grow. And as they flew from flower to flower, sipping the nectar, they picked up a fine yellow dust called pollen. And that's what flowers produce. And by carrying the pollen from one flower to another, the bees and the butterflies help the flowers produce seeds for new plants. There's the bee buzzing around, sipping the nectar. And here's the butterflies. They're all very busy in the garden. Well, though the butterflies were helpful, the gardener knew that their young, those caterpillars, they were not. They often damaged the plants because they loved to eat all the leaves. The ants and the wasps were in the garden, and sometimes they can be harmful in one way, but helpful in another. And sometimes they nibbled on the ripe fruit right before the gardener got around to picking it, and so then they would be having all those holes in there. But they also helped the garden because they ate some of the harmful insects. But there was one question about those aphids. The gardener knew that they were bad for the garden because they sucked the plant juices and they spread diseases. But he didn't know very much about those bright red ladybugs. And he thought they were special, and he was very fond of them. Well, one day the gardener had an idea. Do you see this can? He's going to spray his garden with some bug killer. He wanted the bad bugs to go away. He wanted his garden to be very, very, very growing so beautifully, and he thought he could get rid of them. So he sprayed and he sprayed, and as the gardener sprayed, he sprayed that bug spray all over. The bees and the ants and the wasps all hid in their nests to protect themselves. But the ladybugs, they don't have any nests, so they just all flew away in every direction. And the aphids, they don't have any nests either, but they decided they could go under the leaves and they would be hidden from the spray. Well, when that gardener finished spraying, the aphids crept out of their hiding place and they went back to work. And many of them died from the poison, but a lot of them survived. They were still living on the plants. The aphids were sucking the juice of the leaves and the tender plant stems, and some of the juice was passing right through their body, and it turned into a sweet, sticky liquid called honeydew. Soon it seemed like there were more aphids than ever before. They were multiplying and they were sucking more and more of the plant juice. And it wasn't long before the plants in the garden were coated with sticky honeydew, which the ants loved. Well, the ants would milk the aphids by stroking them with their feelers, and this made the aphids squeeze out the mildew, and then the ants would just lick it up. Oh, they loved that. Look at them all coming. There were so many ants trying to get that honeydew from the aphids that the gardener began to see trails all over his garden. Oh, there's a lot of them coming. The bees in the garden liked the honeydew too, because it was easier for the bees to lick the honeydew from the plants to make their honey than it was for them to go from flower to flower collecting the nectar. And besides, there were a lot fewer flowers now. The plants had become too sick to make beautiful flowers, and because of the damage that those aphids had done, oh, his garden is looking very, very sad. With fewer flowers, there were fewer butterflies visiting the garden, but there were still many caterpillars, and remember what we said, they liked to eat the leaves, and they stayed in the garden eating and eating until they were big enough to turn into butterflies, but then they just flew away. They didn't stay. Not only were the plants too sick to make many flowers, but the fruit trees were too sick to produce fruit. Wasps were buzzing angrily around, fighting over what fruit was left. Look at those, look like peaches or nectarines. They're all getting eaten up. All the while, the aphids continued to multiply. There were so many, in fact, that they were crowded together on the plants, and they were fighting each other to get some space and some food. Many plants were covered with that sticky honeydew, too. Look at them all. You can hardly see the leaves. They're just everywhere. The gardener knew that something was terribly wrong, and the garden had few flowers. The fruit trees had a little fruit, and the vegetables were shriveled up and wilted. There were anthills and trails everywhere. The plants are covered with aphids. The wasps are becoming a nuisance, and the butterflies had all but disappeared. Even the bees' honey tasted strange because it was made from that honeydew, not from the nectar of the flowers. The gardener didn't know what to do. He could see that spraying with that bug spray was a very big mistake, and he understood now how the garden, everything depended on each other, and somehow it was all linked together and depending on each other to survive. What about those ladybugs, a friend suggested. What about them, the farmer asked. Ladybugs are nature's way of controlling aphids. And she gave him an address. You can order a whole supply of ladybugs. Well, when the box got delivered, the gardener took it out to the garden, opened it up, and left it in a shady spot under the tree. One by one, the ladybugs are coming out. Some of them are flying out, some of them are crawling out, but soon they were everywhere in his garden. Look at it, it says live ladybugs, handle with care. The ladybugs ate all the aphids they could find. They ate and ate and ate all those aphids. They never stopped. They went from the time the sun came up till it went back down, and the plants started to grow stronger and healthier. Well, when the following summer came, the gardener looked at his garden and he was so happy. Once again, there were hardy flowers and fruit trees and vegetables growing. Butterflies were back, ants and wasps had settled down, and everybody was happy. The bees were making really delicious honey. The gardener smiled. He had always known there was something special about those ladybugs. And now you know too. So when you're taking a walk with mom or dad even a bike ride and you see a little ladybug, maybe you could stop and say thank you because they're really taking very good care of our garden. And while you're out, don't forget to look in your garden for some of those insects we talked about, and you might even find some worms too. I'll be busy finding a book for next time. Till then, have a fun week. Bye now.